In this video, I got to interview one of my good buddies, Bryan Barberena. Bryan joined the UFC in 2014 and has fought some notable names like Leon Edwards, Colby Covington, Sage Northcutt, Robbie Lawler, RDA. Bryan has had a long, extensive career in the UFC. In this video, we discuss many things like Bryan's Rum Company, Ridge Rum, his career in the UFC and the adversities he overcame, fighter pay, what the future of the UFC looks like, and what his future looks like. I hope you enjoy this video. Bryan is a great guy, and this is a great conversation. Now let's get into it.
Of course, man. Happy to always talk with you. It was cool talking to you through the fights too, so that was fun.
Yeah, I'm not going to brag or nothing, but I was 4-for-1 on the main card of the fight. The only one I got wrong was the damn Anthony Smith fight.
Yeah.
Which
Sorry, I got a little call in between those. Rich. All right.
You're all good. But I do see, I want to go ahead and mention it too, before I forget, your rum that you've been putting out. How did that get started? How did you get is this your own rum or did you collab with somebody?
So I worked with a distillery. Some friends of mine at Muddy River Distillery is our distiller. I'm friends with the distiller there, the master distiller, and all the guys at Muddy River. And so I've been talking with them for, years. They sponsored me for fights, and stuff like that before. And so like we've been, they've just been friends and stuff and talking about it for quite some time now. And then, me and the master distiller worked on a blend and been working on it, and then finally, decided to release it, and so got it out there, and came out with the blend with them. And yeah, Ridge Rum, man, it's just something I want to do. I like to drink on occasion, especially on the farm after a long day at work.
Oh yeah.
Working around, fight after fights, whatever like that, have a little drink and enjoy the evening. But yeah, so I just wanted to come on my own, and rum was what I was drinking at the time. I was really into, whiskeys and bourbons, and kind of just started getting into rums, and kind of wanted to create my own type, I guess, my own kind of rum, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Ridge is different than your average rum.
Do you believe in the pre-fight ritual? I guess you could say, like the Ilya where you drink before the day of the fight.
Actually, I am. As soon as I get the contract signed and everything, I cold turkey and cut it out,
Oh,
man.
really? Is that
Yeah.
hard to do?
No, no. I mean, not for me. It's not. It never has been. It's just one of those things, kind of like the goal set. There's the goal set. That there's a mission, and I know what needs to be done, and cutting it out, eating bad, cutting out everything, and just going straight for it is
What's
just kind of
the
how.
what's the best thing? The first slice of pizza after the weight cutting stuff, or the first sip of alcohol?
For sure, I'd say sorry. The pizza is probably the best. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that the best.
I always enjoyed the Instagram story posts that you would have of you and your wife of the
Yeah,
pizzas, especially when you were in London. I want to say, and literally there was like a slice of pizza where the cheese is like falling off.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's
man. We've had good pizza at a lot of places. There's been times even where it didn't look like I was gonna be able to get pizza. Like I remember, like it was yesterday. When I fought in Brazil and fought Warley Alves. Um, I was like, everything was closed. There was like no pizza in sight. After the fight, I was like, man, this sucks. I'm not going to be able to have pizza. Benson Henderson was in my corner for that fight, and he like had heard that the staffing with the UFC had gotten pizza earlier that night, and it was in their break room. And he went and took a whole pizza and bring it on the bus to me after the fight.
jeez.
Yeah,
Did
so
anybody
it's
catch
like,
him?
huh?
Did
Nah,
anybody
who's
catch
gonna stop? Who's gonna stop Benson? Come on. Who's gonna confront him on that? Come on,
Yeah, I
no one's
would
gonna try
hate
to take that pizza out of him.
I would hate to be the poor chef or like the person that just got the pizza and was like, "Hey, I need that back."
Yeah,
Turn
yeah,
around and it's former UFC champion. You're like, "Oh, okay, never mind."
I
Keep
mean, he
the
said there was like a bunch sitting there, so he took one. So, I mean, my man.
that sounds like it was open for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, the UFC, I feel like especially well now they got the PIs and stuff like that, but like really because you grew up or not grew up, but you fought in the not the golden era I would say, but like the era of like true transformation, the 180 from like the Anderson, Robbie Lawler era to now where like everything's changed from fighting style, how people eat and prep, the weight cutting. Because back in the day, it really just was like put a trash bag on, go lose some weight. Hopefully you make weight.
Yeah.
But now it's calculated with calories and how much you're training, the time of day you're training, all that. Do you feel like back in the day when you were going through that, that was a harder era than it is now?
Yes and no. Back then is there was obviously less opportunity and everything like that, and less knowledge about it, and there's people out there training and stuff. But even still, it was like schools were kind of one sided, whether they're either jiu-jitsus or striking schools and stuff like that. Where now it's like every school is pretty much everything. Um, and like you said, weight cut people were doing trash bags, and now it's more calculated. I even like over the years, mine has changed a lot too, and you have to adapt and try to improve to get better. Um, but as far as like even skill wise, I feel like the competition is probably greater now. Like the up and coming guys coming in now and stuff like that, or even more dangerous and everything, just because they started when they were kids. I started when I was right out of high school. At 19. Well, I think I was maybe 20 when I started, but I mean, still, they're been doing jujitsu and training striking since they were in elementary school now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they turning 18, fighting on the contender series. It's like
You said your
so.
game has changed a lot since you first started. What specifically changed for you when you first started fighting to now?
Well, really, I mean, before it was like weight cut. No one really knows about weight cut, and even especially like fighters. I followed a lot of fighters on how they cut weight, and it's just fighters just know how to make weight.
Yeah.
They're gonna make it or they're not. So it's kind of one of those things. I was never gonna not make weight, but it definitely hurt my health a lot, and so I just had to get smart about my health. That's why I went up to I was up to the 70s when I was at 55s. Like 55s was a lot, and even when I went to 70s, I was still cutting a lot of weight, cutting wrong, and for a long time. And then I actually started working with my wife. Actually started working with a diet person, but an actual doctor, and like they do all your blood work, everything like that, check everything, all your levels, make sure you're healthy. Help you kind of get healthy and everything, track
Yeah.
everything, your stomach issues, everything. Um, so then I started like doing that, and she started doing that for me and like making my meals and stuff too. Um, and man, it changed a lot. It just made you realize, like, man, how much I've been like screwing my body up for all these
Yeah.
years doing it wrong,
Do you have
and
regret about that? Like when you look like just in general, really, but I'm sure specifically about like weight cutting and training, but like do you have regret when you look back on your career of 10 years in the UFC and think like, damn, like I wish I would have done this differently, or why did I do this, or even like training styles. Like back in the day, um, people wouldn't necessarily train everything what they would need to do. They would maybe just specifically just do their style, kickboxing, learn some takedown defense, and that's it. Is there any
yeah.
regret you have?
No, honestly, I don't have any regrets. It is what it is. It played out well. Honestly, it worked out.
Yeah, 10 years is a long time to be in the
I made it
UFC.
to the UFC. That was
Yeah.
the big deal. And then to be able to stay there, that's always the hardest thing. And it's always the thing to be said is it's not about like getting to the UFC, it's about staying in there. So 10 years is pretty good in the UFC, had some great fights. Um, fought some big names, put some people away. So
What's
no
your
regrets.
what's your most or like your biggest moment you could ever say for you in your UFC career? Your biggest like, damn, I'm so happy that happened, or I achieved that, or I fought this person, I won? What's your like most proud moment, your biggest achievement in your eyes that happened to you in your UFC career?
I mean, probably fighting, Robbie Lawler or Matt Brown. Those
Yeah.
are probably my two, huge, huge moments in my fight career. You just in joy for me.
Yeah.
I think Robbie Lawler for sure was the
International
biggest.
Fight Week.
Yeah, International Fight Week. It's kind of one of those things. If there's one person I know who's not going to shoot for a takedown, is going to stand there and throw with me, it's going to be Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's like at no point did I think he was going to shoot for a takedown. And maybe if he did, I would have caught me really off guard or whatever. But
Yeah.
I just knew like that this dude is a warrior. He knows, he just wants to take my head off, and I'm going to try to do the same. And we're going to see who just falls first. So
Yeah, he's a hard dude, especially before he really, because after he lost his title, and I think it's just age, but like he's been in the UFC just fighting forever. So eventually, your body's not going to be able to keep up with yourself when you're fighting all the time. But Robbie is that guy who is stand and bang. And even when he, after he lost his title, like his fighting style and his game plan never changed. Like it was still
yeah,
bite down on the mouthpiece and let's swing.
yeah, I like that. You got to respect that.
Yeah.
The
The
dude's a legend.
Matt Brown fight too, though. I remember watching that. I think that was back in March, March 26, 2022. I remember watching that fight. Those are both back to back too, but
Yeah,
that was the fight that was, if I'm not mistaken, that was your last fight on your contract. And then afterwards they told you, "Hey, we're gonna resign you." What was that feeling like? No, like going into that fight not knowing if you're gonna get resigned or not, and then they do, and then you get to fight Robbie Lawler at International Fight Week. Like that had to be
yeah.
pretty crazy.
Well, honestly, I was supposed to fight Matt Brown earlier that year, and if it fell out fight week,
Oh
and
wow.
got COVID,
Mm.
and
Yeah, that's right.
I was like, they're like, oh, he's out, and I was like, look, They're like, I was like, do you have someone for me? And they're like, no, we don't have anybody yet. I was like, okay, well, I'm getting on the plane tomorrow, no matter what. Like, you're gonna find me someone before Friday, like I'm coming. I don't care who it is. So I ended up fighting Darian Weeks
Yep.
that week. Like I found out the Wednesday of fight week. I was already there in Vegas when I found out. Um, and I really wanted that Matt Brown fight to come back together. And they were like, yeah, the chances are, unlikely that that fight's gonna come back together. And I was like, come on. Like, so when it did, and it was in his hometown too, like it was awesome. Like, what a great opportunity. The dude's a stud, just another fun fight that I've always wanted a matchup with. And, we got to go in there and throw down.
If you don't mind me asking, why were you never, or did you ask for it, but why were you never put on the UFC Charlotte card?
Actually, so uh they didn't even tell me about the card, and I was
Oh,
pissed because
damn.
I had been asking for a fight, and then I think the Gunnar Nelson fight came up short
Yeah.
notice, and like, but I had been asking for a fight, trying to get a fight booked, and they didn't say anything. And then I took the Gunnar fight, and literally like the next day, it
They
was announced that
announced.
Charlotte they were coming to Charlotte. I was like, damn.
Yeah. So when they do ask you like on a short notice fight, because you've always been pretty active in your career. You've gone through some crazy injuries and like that emergency surgery that happened back in 2020.
Yeah.
Um, but you've always been pretty active. Your body's always been pretty good and you fight relatively, pretty often. How did that fight, or like, how did the UFC come to you on that Gunnar Nelson like short notice fight? Like, what did they just call you and say, "Hey, do you want to fight?" Or was there more of a process than that?
I would say I was kind of like hounding them,
Really?
like, hey, I want to fight somebody. I was like, fights were falling out. I was asking for people. There was, I think, even there was like a time, like a Nico Price had a guy fall out to fight him, and like I asked to step in on that.
I would have liked
Uh,
that fight. That would have been a good fight.
Ponzinibbio, I tried to step in to fight Ponzinibbio before, and actually, me and Ponzinibbio were like talking on Instagram, And we're like, yeah, dude, I'm telling him to. I think it was like to fight Ian Gary. I tried to fight Ian Gary,
Oh
and there
man,
was
that's
like we were messaging on Instagram, and like I was like, dude, I'm. He's like, well, I told my management team. I was like, dude, I'm talking to them and telling them I want the fight. Like, so
yeah.
things just didn't work out. There's timing for everything. Sometimes things don't work out. Um, so the Gunnar Nelson fight, it just happened to be one of those times where like I was asking and it was available and they were like, hey, I have this and do you want it? And I was like, yeah, like I'm not going to turn down fights, especially
Yeah.
when I'm asking. So it's like, yeah, I don't care about the matchups or what they are. Like people are like, oh, well, heavy grapplers, whatever. It's like, whatever. I don't care.
How do you like look into fights like that? Because in your recent in your most recent fights, you have fought heavy grapplers. RDA after the 3-fight win streak that was in December, the same card as Kevin Holland and Wonder Boy. You fight Gunnar Nelson, so back to back, heavy style grapplers. Gerald Mershart in your very last fight, who's known for his jujitsu. When you go in there and your fight style and stuff like that, are you just planning like I'm just gonna like go with how I fight, or do you go in there like, okay, I know I'm going against a heavy grappler. We're just gonna try and keep this, takedown defense and look for shots. Like what's your mentality and the game plan when you go into these type of fights?
Yeah, normally it's, just keep to my style, fight my fight. And sadly, those last three, it's kind of fell into, fighting their fight and, trying to be more on the cautious side when, really, especially in that last fight, it's I went in, we were the whole game plan, like after the Gunner fight was like, okay, we need to, really, me and my wife sat down, talked about it, like, you need to get back to you. What do we need to stop falling into these people's stuff and just go out there and fight. And kind of was like the game plan for throughout camp. And then somewhere kind of like drifted a little bit more and try to figure things out. And I think I just get caught up on trying to improve too much and like trying to be a better style of myself. And then so when I get in there, like through camp, I learn these new techniques, I learn these new skills, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm a better version of myself. And I kind of get in there and these last three fights, I just haven't just, let go and fought the guys. So ended up falling into, their style, their fight, and it's cost me. And, as far as them being heavy grapplers, like who gives a shit? I don't
Yeah.
care. I
Yeah.
can grapple. Maybe it didn't show in those fights or whatever, but I know I can grapple and I could also put people away and stuff like that too. So it's not just, oh, well, they're a heavy grappler. Well, I'm a heavy hitter, so
Yeah.
got to think on that side too. So yeah, it just didn't work out. That's
And
it's the way it is, and
and when you look at your
good.
career, I'm not just saying this just 'cause I'm talking to you, but like I would say this to anybody, but like or like if I was talking to anybody else, but like you really have had a crazy UFC career, fought the best of the best, fighting RDA former champion, fighting Colby Covington, former interim champion, Leon Edwards, current champion. Sage Northcutt, you beat him, and he was supposed to be the next guy. Like you have fought some tough Randy Brown, he's still in the UFC and he's just, having these close contention fights. You've had a insane career fighting, only the best of the best. When you look at the fights and what you've accomplished, you've got to feel good about yourself, right? Like you have achieved so much. Like it does suck that you in your last four fights you lost, but the people you win against and the contention you had with every single fighter in your UFC career, like you got to feel good about that. Like, damn, like that's impressive, you know?
Thanks, man. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I had a great career with the UFC, and it's sad that it's over. Like I would have loved to continue to fight, and continue to put on shows and beat people up. And maybe that is. I'm looking, other options. It's not over.
So
I'd like to fight a little more. So
So what is like next for you? What would you like? Do you like the karate combat? Do you like bare knuckle boxing? Do you want to go to strictly just boxing? Like what excites you for your next opportunity?
Yeah, I'm open for kind of anything. I mean, karate combat, I'm not sure. Like, do you have to do karate before? Like, I mean, I've
I
done
don't.
karate in the garage or something at some point in my life. So,
I saw. I mean, I'm sure if you could throw a leg kick, I think you'd be fine in there. But like,
all right,
I mean, I see more knockouts with the hands than I do with the feet. So
yeah.
I think the karate shit is out the window.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's cool. BKFC, I'd like to do that. I'm interested in that. That's for sure. I
Yeah, I
like to
saw
throw
you
down.
calling out Mike Perry on that. And he's about to box Jake Paul, which that's
Yeah,
pretty exciting. But I mean, that would be a great fight from both former UFC fighters, Mike
yeah.
Perry and him.
Mike Perry's a stud. He's out there doing his thing. He's created his like the aura around him for BKFC. I've been trying to fight Mike Perry for a long time. I've been trying to fight Mike Perry for as long as I've been in the UFC and saw him fight. I thought it would be a great scrap. Want to test myself against him. So, the fact that he's in BKFC now and he's doing big things, good for him. Hey, if I have to go in there and put someone to sleep and then I could stand toe to toe with him and get in his face and we can throw down. Cool. I'm not scared to get punched. Everyone, I think people take the wrong look who transfer over to BKFC or whatever. They think it's, MMA stand up or boxing, and it's neither. It's its own thing, and it's exciting to me. I also saw that you know the BKFC president went and took a picture with Robbie Lawler. So if that's a potential that Robbie Lawler is going to be going there, like I'd
Oh, the
love to mix it up
rematch.
with him in that as well. If he's interested in that, I'd love to run it in BKFC. That'd be cool. Um, but yeah, man, I'm open for anything. Combat BKFC, I think is really cool and has a lot going for it. I'm excited. I think I could help. With my fighting style, I think I fit perfectly in that mold for sure. And it'd be nice not having people shoot at my legs for a
Oh
while.
yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, if you look at all the really primarily strikers that were in the UFC or used to be in the UFC and now they're in BKFC, I mean, they've all had success. Ben Rothwell, I'm pretty sure, had some
Yeah,
success. Mike Perry had some success. Um, even Paige Van Zandt had some success and now she's doing power slap, which is that's just
yeah.
wild. But what do you think about that power slap?
I don't know. I've never watched it. I've
Yeah,
never watched it, so I'm not really sure.
it seems a
I also don't
little
have the
uh
desire to watch it right
yeah.
now. So
It's just weird how someone's like openly letting someone slap them for I don't know. I don't get the scheme
yeah.
behind it.
Well, then how do you rock paper scissors? See who goes first, or
I have no
how
idea.
does
I
that work?
think you pick a coin or pull a name out the hat or something. I don't know. Fuck that though. I'm not standing there giving at least give me a chance. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I would love to see you in BKFC. BKFC is very exciting because it does feel like it's a good it's a good like different sport, but and it's still like a valuable organization, right? Conor McGregor is now a part owner into it, so it's going to have some success. He's got a ton of money to put into it, and it's just very interesting because you can get these former UFC fighters. It's always interesting seeing people too, though, where they're doing the cross fighting, going from BKFC to boxing to UFC, Bellator, all those things. So there's
Yeah, I
definitely a
think
lot of
it's cool
potential there.
that they're allowing, guys to fight other places too, to mix it up, BKFC, and then you could do some boxing matches or whatever, and like MMA if you wanted. I think that's cool. Kind of mix
Yeah,
it up. But it would be nice to not have someone shoot at my legs for a while and just
yeah.
standing there and throw some hands. That's would be fun.
What goes on your mind when someone shoots on your legs? Are you thinking, "Oh, are you serious?
Like
Give me a
mother.
second."
Yeah, get off
Yeah.
me.
Fucking hip bump. It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. So it is insane where like, you got all these former fighters going over there. What do you think about the fighters now and pretty much how the UFC is looking now in terms of the future of it? Do you like really what I want to get into is fighter unions and stuff like that. Do you think the UFC should have a fighter union? Do you think fighters in there should have more rights or should get paid more or maybe have a little bit more of a say than just the company basically dictating everything?
I mean, absolutely. Definitely should be, a fighter union, and at some point, there will be, hopefully, for the next generation. Um, I mean, look at all big sports, the NFL, NBA, they all have, unions where that's taking care of the athletes and, not only during, but after the sport's done. Um, so yeah, I think for sure. And, people always ask me like, oh, do you think fighters should make more? And it's like, well, yeah, I think fighters should make more, but at the same time, like, I'm not arguing it when I'm there because I'm happy doing it, and I'm agreeing to the price that I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
So I can't. There's no reason to argue it. At that point. So, but yeah, I believe I would like to get paid more. I'd like other fighters to get paid more. I think it's we're out there sacrificing our bodies, for our enjoyment, but also for everybody else's enjoyment. And yes, we're getting paid, but I definitely think it could be better. And I think for a union to happen and stuff like that, I think you need higher up people, you need champions, you need uh, Conor McGregor's, stuff like that to grab onto it. And I just think like right now, them getting paid or whatever is pulling them away from that. So
Yeah.
it is what it is, but I hope it happens for the later generation, and it just will be better for the sport for fighters later in the future.
And I know the counter argument to that from the UFC side would always be like, well, we give you the publicity. You're on camera, you're on TV, which I do get to a certain extent. But then again, you have this multi-million dollar, like I love the UFC. I love MMA. I love fighting. It's very exciting, but to a certain extent, you're not in this is not a career where it's all about the time. It's not about how long can you stay in it. It's about how much can you achieve in a short amount of time with the abilities that you're given, right? And sometimes it does feel like, certain fighters, especially, I'm sure like over 303, Dan Ige got paid really well,
Yeah,
stepping in on 3 hour notice. But it feels like certain fighters, where maybe they're given under, they're under a contract, they might get screwed over a little bit more, or they can look at you and say, well, you've lost 2 of the last 4 fights. Why should we bump up your pay? Even though you might bring in more views because you are a knockout artist or, whatever.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely people always ask me, "Well, you probably made more for taking that short notice." It's like, "Well, no. I didn't make more for coming in on short notice at all." You
Because
know?
it's still a contract fight.
Yeah, it's a contract fight, and like
Yeah.
you could argue and say like, "Yeah, well, I won't take it." Well, someone else is going to take it,
Yeah.
and they're going to make more per se or whatever unless
Yeah.
like but I mean, I took the Sage Northcutt fight on 8 days notice. I've took other short notice fights on, a couple weeks notice. Like it's just also too like I'm one of those guys I want to fight, I want to
Yeah.
get out there and fight.
And I
So
and I'm sure too, like to a certain extent, you will get paid, um, a little bit more. They might help you out a little bit, but it's not like they're giving you a $500,000 for stepping in on 8 day notice. Like you're a fighter, this is like your job to do,
yeah.
but it would
And
be a
I didn't
nice.
expect it either,
Yeah.
honestly. At that point, I was just like, hell yeah, whatever. The opportunity's there. Yeah. Like
How does this work? This might be an ignorant question to ask, but like, so right after you fight, does it just like all come in at one time what you're showed up paid, or like how does the financial side of getting paid from the UFC work? Let's
so
say
it's
let's
direct
just
deposited. Yeah. So I think you get it the following week, the Monday or whatever.
and do they send you a check or do they
It's direct deposit into your
direct
account. So
deposit?
you used to get like a check. You get a check. Um, yeah, you get your checks. You used to get checks
That's gotta
to
be
deposit.
nice though. If like let's say you're on a 3 fight $100,000, 4 fight $100,000, and just seeing that 25,000 going in, you're like, dang, that feels good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's a big difference than like when you first get into the UFC. I remember when first got into the UFC, I can't remember what I was making. It was like 5 and 5 or something.
How did
Uh
when you first got into the UFC, if you don't mind me asking, did they go ahead and tell you like, hey, you're doing a 3 fight contract, or do you have to negotiate for that?
No. So like they'll send you the contract. There's like an entry, like it's like when you first get into the UFC, it's an entry. This is what you're making.
Mm, I
It's a
gotcha.
usually a 3 fight contract. You got a 3 fight contract, and this is what it is for your entry or whatever. So like when I went in, I want to say, gosh, I want to. Okay, yeah. So I was like 5-5 when I first started. I think I'm pretty sure it was 5-5, and I won. And so when you win, you go up like it's like a tier system.
Yeah.
Like if you lose, you stay the same. If you win, you go up a couple thousand or something like that. Um, and some people's pay is different, like a solid across the board when you're higher up or whatever. But anyways, I remember when I got in or whatever, I fought, and it was like my second fight. I was at maybe it was like 7-7 or something like that.
Not
And
much of an increase.
no, and they had just increased the like coming into the UFC pay. So it was like I got in at 5-5. I won my fight, went up 2 grand with 7 at 7-7 for my second fight. And now someone who just came in was making 10-10. I was like, fuck, what the hell? Like, I need to
What the
get through this
fuck?
contract.
This
Yeah.
is
I need to get through this contract and renegotiate. Like, I mean, it just, that's what happens in the beginning or whatever. But right now, I think it's been the same for a while. I can't remember what it is. Last time I heard anything, it was like 12-12 to come in or whatever. But
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's
uh,
also increased too just over time from, uh,
yeah,
inflation and just times have changed, the company making more money. Because when you started in 2014, I imagine, they were I mean, they were obviously big, but not as big as they are now. They didn't have the ESPN contract, the Disney deals, all that, which is kinda insane
exactly.
to think about, like, now because back in the day, I mean, it would be on Fox or, the old, I can't remember what the old pay-per-view.
Spike,
Yes. Yeah,
Spike TV.
Spike. Yeah, and, now it's so easy, just have the ESPN app, buy
Yeah.
UFC 303, 304 coming up, and it's easy. Back in the day, you'd have to either call or look it up, and you're like, "God, I hope it goes through."
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There's like, when I was not much opportunity, when I was coming up for sure. It was, they had the Ultimate Fighter, and that was fairly new, which I did try out for the Ultimate Fighter, but I didn't make it.
How do tryouts go? Like, so how does that whole situation go? How do you find out about it? How can you try out for it?
So honestly, don't know how you can find out about it. I think someone like a gym owner told me about it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go try out." And I was like, this is destiny. I'm gonna make it, kind of thing. Get there, and you do the first round is like they call a certain number of people into a room. They have mats on the ground, and they do like a grappling match. They say
Mm.
you, Brian versus this guy or whatever, and they call us a mat, and you get like 3 minutes to grapple or whatever. So
And
I
you're like, "Of
grappled this
course it's
guy.
grappling first."
Yeah, it's like okay, well I grappled this guy, and it was back and forth, and it was like even. Um, and his name got called to move to the next round, which was the
Oh, dang.
striking round, which is like mitts and stuff. You just
Yeah.
hit mitts, and then there's an interview round, and then they let you know. Um,
'Cause you gotta come in with some drama. I mean, it is a TV show. You gotta have, like, some sad backstory, like The Bachelor type. You gotta have something to talk about, you know?
well, looking back on it, man, it worked out. Like I'm glad I didn't do that. Being away from my family, my kids at that
Yeah.
time would have been extremely hard. Um, but I went and won like an 85 title after that, and some local thing, and then went on a 7 fight win streak, and then got a short notice fight to the UFC. So
What
it,
was the, first organization you fought for when you went pro?
probably King of the Cage,
King of the
I
Cage.
think. Yeah, no, nope. Actually, my first pro fight was Dakota FC. I think it was. Yeah,
I don't even know if that's around. I've never even heard of that.
it's not around anymore. It was in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's not around anymore. But yeah, I fought for them. I fought at 205, knocked the guy
Jeez.
out.
Oh my
Yeah,
god. That's a pretty good accomplishment. So you fought in 4 different weight classes?
yeah,
Lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, that is quite insane, especially the starting off career. No, that's to say light heavyweight. Um, dang. When you look at the champions now, Leon Edwards, John Jones, you know, uh, I'm freaking blanking, Ilya Taporia, all these fighters and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and you see how advanced they are. What do you think, or what do you see the future of MMA turn into? What do you think the fighters look like? Do you think they become more advanced? Do you think mentally they become a different breed? How does the next generation, or what does the next generation of fighters look like to you?
Yeah, I think they're just smarter, I guess. You know, smarter, more well-rounded for sure.
More well
It's not
rounded.
just one thing. Not just you know, a striker or a grappler. I think they're well-rounded for sure, and they're smart. They're going to do exactly what it takes, whatever it takes to win, as far as like mixing in grappling. Like even if they're getting the better out of the striking or whatever the guy wants with a good shot, they're going to mix it up, for a takedown or something like that. Where me, I just continue to strike like fuck it. But yeah, I don't know. I think the future for sure is just it's going to be exciting. I think people, like I said, they've been training from when they're little kids now, and now they're growing up and getting to the UFC. They're just going to be more crazy, well-rounded, and a lot more dangerous.
What do you think? I might be putting you in a bad position because I'm sure you've trained with, fighters before that have fought in other organizations. But what is your opinion on Bellator or PFL, ONEFC, these other organizations compared to the UFC? Do you look at them as like lesser competition or like, they're good, they're B-level fighters, but like they don't compare to the UFC? What is your opinion on the other MMA organizations?
I don't even look at them as like B-level fighters or whatever. They're still high-level fighters. I don't look at this guy and be like, he's a B-level guy because he's in Bellator or
Yeah.
whatever. He's still a high-level fighter. He's at the top of the top. I think it's good having these other organizations because it gives competition. It
Hmm.
helps fighters, give more outlets. Also raises pay for fighters too
Yep.
because there's that competition out there. So I think it's a great thing for fighters coming up and everything to have options. Um, that being said, I do think the UFC is the cream of the crop. It is, um, but I do feel like there is top notch fighters in these other organizations, and could they come into the UFC and do well? Absolutely. Um, it's just like maybe at that time, the UFC wasn't as interested or whatever, and there was more money towards Bellator, and they're just trying to do what's best for them and their family, and so they went with the more money. Or maybe the UFC didn't even offer any of them, and Bellator came to them and picked them up quick, or PFL picked them up, early on and was like, "Hey, we'll give you this much money or whatever. You come sign with us." It's when you're starting out, man, you're not making much. Even now,
Yeah.
it's like you're not making much. So when you get a big jump and you get an opportunity to sign with a big um, promotion, it's a great opportunity. So I don't look at any of these guys as B-level fighters or anything like that. Like for sure, no. There's guys that can go into the UFC and compete, but like I said, UFC is the cream of the crop, and you expect when you see the UFC for everyone you're going against to be the cream of the crop.
100%. And I think you are correct. It's all about opportunity because sometimes it's just what's given to you. What can you take? Would you ever consider fighting for if PFL came to you or ONE FC said, "Hey, we want to sign you"? Would you ever consider it, or would you probably stay away and just really stick to just BKFC and into the more of the boxing side of it?
Uh, you know, I I talk with them. I'm interested. Like I said, I'm open for anything. I'm not settled on one thing. Obviously, BKFC is I'm really interested in that. And Dave Feldman, come talk to me. Let's talk. Let's talk. And I think I could be a big part of the BKFC organizations and do some big things over there for those guys and put on some exciting fights for sure. So come talk to me, Dave Feldman. If you want to talk, I'm here. Also, but yeah, if PFL came to me and talked, like I would hear them out for sure. I wouldn't be like, nah, we're not,
Yeah.
nah.
Not the UFC. It's all right.
Yeah,
Spend
yeah.
my
It's like,
time there. Yeah.
yeah, I would for sure hear them out. I'd hear them out, whoever. I take all offers, and then sit down with my family, sit down with my wife, talk it over, and make our decision.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you can never count them out. I really like ONEFC too. PFL is the point system for me. I just don't understand. It's too complicated to figure out how the rankings work and all that. But ONE FC I really enjoy because they do the jujitsu, Muay Thai matches. They change the MMA to the Muay Thai to the MMA Muay Thai rounds. I think
Yeah,
they've got it figured out. That for some reason they just keep losing money because they can't get enough attention in the
yeah,
U.S. side. But they do have a pretty cool idea of changing up their what they want to do and stuff like that.
yeah, for sure. Keeping it different, keeping it open and wild.
To recap, before I let you go, to recap, what did you think of Ian Gary and the Michael Venom Page fight? The reason why I brought that up, I meant to circle back, but I wanted to ask you those questions. Michael Venom Page, coming from Bellator, had a great win against Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is a great fighter. He had success in middleweight, went down to welterweight. Kind of felt like in my opinion, it felt like he didn't take it as serious as he should have. Like in my eyes, Kevin Holland is that guy who has so much talent, but sometimes he just like doesn't care. So I feel like sometimes he will like want to prove a statement while he's fighting. But
Yeah.
Michael Venom Page had great success against Kevin Holland and then fights Ian Gary. And, it was a very close fight, but he didn't win it. What did you think of that performance? What did you think of Ian Gary beating Michael Venom Page, Michael Venom Page losing, and then him coming over to the UFC? Do you think there's still hope? Is there upside still for him, or is that the end for him?
I think for sure there's still upside. I think he can put on some exciting fights too, and he's going to finish people, and so it'll bring him right back. Bring attention back to him too if he goes out there and knocks out the next guy with something crazy, because that's just how he does it. But yeah, I thought the fight was well, I mean, Ian Gary, he's like I said, he's kind of an up and coming guy. He's on the cusp of not the new generation, but like a newer generation. So I thought it was really smart of him to mix it up, and as much as he wanted to stand on the feet or whatever, opened up the ground game or whatever. And I thought Venom Page, I thought he just he was really good at being active about getting back up and kind of not giving up submissions and stuff, but then he kind of just settled in safe spots instead of continuing to be relentless on the get up. And I mean, who am I to say too? It's the same thing for me at times as well. And when you're in there, it's a little bit different. But I feel like when, especially in the third round, when it's close and he's on your back and he's kind of high over top, try to shake, try to pull his head down.
Yeah.
I mean, but like I said, I mean, outside spectating, even though I'm a fighter myself, it's still the same. Like, you can say what you want until you're in there doing it yourself. So, uh, it's just different with every fight. But yeah, I would have liked to see him be. He just seemed a little sluggish at the end, and I
Yeah.
thought the fight was really close in that third round, and up to that third round. So, I think a little more effort on those grappling exchanges, and he could have probably squeezed it out and you know
See,
done something.
I'm just a fan of MMA. I do train, but obviously I'm not a professional fighter or anything. But when I watch pay-per-views, I watch them with my buddies, and I'm always, if there's a grappling exchange, I'm like, there's the key lock, there's
Yeah.
the ninja rolls coming, armbar. But do you still have those reactions when you're watching a fight and you're like, why didn't he do this? What is he doing? There's the armbar, or why didn't he knock him out? There's the cardio. Do you ever still get that excitement when you watch or question what they're doing?
For sure, a little bit, I guess. I don't get too wild or whatever, but I'll just be like, "Wow, what is he doing? Like, shake him off, shake him off."
Yeah.
I literally said that. I was watching the fight last night. The other night was like, man, he's on him on his back on the third round, and he's like his head's over his head.
Yeah.
Like, take him off,
Yeah.
take him off, take him, grab his head, try to pull
Yeah.
him down, whatever. But
Or at
yeah,
least do the butt scoot thing where he's like trying to drop it off. And the hooks weren't even in, like, I mean, they were in, but not completely like where he couldn't
yeah.
move?
Yeah, so it was just there's moments for sure. I think the biggest thing and hardest thing is when you watch a friend or training partner, someone I trained with in the past or even recently, when you watch them fight that's the hardest thing. Like,
Yeah.
I get crazy nerves when like my friends and stuff like that with training partners fights because like you know how good they are, you know their abilities, and it's like you just want them to do the best, to go out there and show exactly what they do in the gym and show their abilities and everything like that. And sometimes you're like, oh, what are you doing? Come on, come on. What do like, yeah, you're letting them out, you're letting them run away, kind of thing. Like, oh, you're in on the double, finish it, kind of thing. Like stuff that you see them do over and over and over again, like good in the gym and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
like you just want it to come full circle in the fight, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and there's moments, and it's just like, but the nerves, man, the nerves
Yeah.
when watching friends is
Yeah.
yeah.
The anxiety. One of my buddies actually, he had a jujitsu tournament, a local jujitsu tournament, like 2 weeks ago. And my hands were sweating while he was going. I'm like, why? This is
Yeah.
this is nothing. This is nothing. I couldn't imagine, especially like in a high organization with so much attention, the nerves there. Um, I just got two questions to ask you before I let you go. First question is, if you could fight any current or former UFC fighter, any division, doesn't matter who it is there someone where you're like, dang, I really wish I could have fought them, or dang, I wish, I could have?
Oh, current form or former any weight
Current,
class.
former, anybody where you're like, dang, it would have been like Chuck Liddell, like, man, it would have been cool to
Actually,
fight.
that was gonna be my person. I was gonna
There we
say,
go. That's
as
like,
it's Chuck Liddell, because like I was a huge Chuck Liddell fan. Like when I started watching, obviously it was like Forrest Griffin on The Ultimate Fighter, Stephen Bonner
oh
era,
yeah,
and Chuck Liddell was like right there
the
throwing hands,
OG,
like the sprawl and brawl master right there. So, uh, for sure, like Chuck Liddell it would be fun to go in there and just throw down with him.
the OG. And
Yeah.
my second question is, if you could create any matchup in the UFC, what would be your number one fight that you would say, I want to see this fight happen? I wish it could have happened. Former or current UFC fighter, like, dang, I wish that fight would have happened.
Hmm, that's a good one. Uh, I don't know. That's tough.
I probably like I have a couple, but like some of mine, like John Jones, Francis, I felt like that would have been like
Oh yeah, that's a
that
good
would have
one. Yeah,
been really good. But I really wish we could have saw like prime Izzy and saw the John, like if Izzy, probably didn't lose him versus the younger John Jones. I felt like that would have been a really fun matchup. Even though looking back on it, looking at it now, John Jones probably would just
yeah,
wrestle the crap out of him. But I really wanted to see like some like you know something insane happen. Those are like two fighters I can just think of. John Jones in any fight pretty much is just like damn it.
yeah.
But Brian, I really appreciate everything you've done. I appreciate this really your time on letting it talk to you and everything that you've done. Your career was amazing in the UFC. I really hope we can see you in a BKFC ring. That would be insane. I'll definitely, wherever it's at, I'll try and get tickets and go to that. It's probably in like New Jersey or Wyoming or something. There's some odd
Yeah.
states where it's legal. But I really am so excited to see what comes up next. I'm sure BKFC will definitely look at you and say, we need a killer in the ring. And congrats to Ridge Rum too. I'm sure
Thank
this
you.
had a lot of success. Where can people buy Ridge Rum at?
Yeah. So right now we're only in North Carolina, and we're kind of somewhat local to where you know I train and live or whatever. Charlotte, Asheville. So from like Charlotte to Asheville, kind of going that way. Uh, Hickory, Morganton, Belmont, Gastonia, Fletcher.
They can buy anywhere
Uh,
ABC store.
yeah, any of those ABC stores. If you're in North Carolina and it's not at your local ABC store, well then tell them it needs to be in there because
Yeah,
it's the shit and you need to have it.
hell yeah. I appreciate it, Brian. You're the absolute best. I cannot wait to see what happens next. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Always great talking with you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, Brian. You have a good one, man.